right, great job getting started today and getting your do now completed and also making sure your notes are ready. So I'll put some coffee beans for a nice strong start. Let's start with our weekly check-in just to blow some steam and check in with each other and build those relationships. I'm going to randomly pick people out for that. Oh, give me a moment. All right, sorry about that interruption. Hopefully you guys have now a good answer for our random question. So our random question was thinking about cuisines of food. So that's thinking about maybe like a country that you really like their dishes from. So the person answering that random question for this week is going to be Hassan. Hassan, what's a cuisine that you like? Can we all show some respect and stop the talking? So we're all listening to Hassan at the moment. Shh. Hassan, what's your favorite? Huh? What?
Arab food.
Arab food. Oh, very nice, yeah. All right, next person that's going to share is going to be Tale. What about you? Chinese food? Yeah, I'm definitely like big on Chinese. I find for me like the stuff that you grew up eating seems to be the most comforting food to eat. For me, it's Malaysian because I grew up eating a lot of Malaysian food. All right, cool. Anybody else want to share their favorite food? Group? No? All right, micro goal for this week. Person sharing that today is Eric. Huh? Finishing all your work. All right, so make sure when you're thinking about finishing all your work that you're specific with that and prioritize things based on when they're due and also how much you've gotten completed. All right, cool. Anything else that anyone else wants to share before we move on? No, no one wants to share anything. All right, cool. Let's switch our thinkings to our learning journey for this week. So it's important for us to think about what we did last week so that way we can tie information together. So last week we did quite a lot of work on plants. We thought about their general structure, and we also looking at native versus introduced versus invasive species. I think I misspelled that. It's wrong, Mahi. And we also looked at some of the usages of today's lesson. We are still continuing with that focus on Aotearoa, New Zealand. In this case, I'm thinking about what pollination is and also how is that process unique in the New Zealand setting. Cool. And lastly, before we move on, is our weekly whakatoki. In this case, we have Nahi ana mua te toto mai ana e muri, which is first clear the weeds, then plant. I think that's great considering we're on the plant unit that they're talking about clearing weeds and then planting. The other way to think about it is to make time for mind weeding. So I'm very much like that. I need to make sure I declutter my head or declutter my space before I can get to any work. And that's just so that way we can work more efficiently. So if we're going to be planting some things, we want to make sure that those plants can really survive and thrive. And so we need to first remember to clear the weeds. We have to do things that might interfere with something so that way we can be more effective. All right, so lesson plan for today, we're going to start with some notes on asexual and sexual reproduction. Just to kind of give you guys some definitions. You guys have a chance then to match the various statements. You guys will have a Mahi choice, and then I'll wrap up with some notes on pollination just to make sure you guys got those key ideas. So that's what we're doing for today's lesson. And on our success criteria, we're taking off number 5 and number 6. So let's get the document camera up and going so we can see to make sure our notes match. What? What about plants? Yes, we're doing a little bit on reproduction, not a whole lot. All right, so in your notes we should have, gonna double check that you guys have it, the date. Today is the 16th of May. You should also have today's learning intention, which is to describe pollination, I believe. Describe what is pollination and explore how this is unique in Aotearoa, New Zealand. Cool, and your due now for today was just your weekly check-in. All right, so you guys should have all that written down into your books. The other thing we need to have in our books is ticking off what we're doing for today. So you should go to your checklist, which is on a green piece of paper. And we are ticking off number 5, that comparison between sexual and asexual reproduction. And we are also working on describe the process of pollination. And if you guys feel like you're confident with explaining what Aotearoa has unique plant life, you can tick that one off. Same thing with that general structure. So once you feel like you've gotten those, you can tick them off at the end. Some of you guys may not feel ready, and that's okay. It just means that you need to study that information. Cool? All right. So, this one?
Oh, the Mahi.
It's just the weekly check-in.
Describe what?
So you should have done that one on your devices. All right. So let's start with today's notes. All right, I'm waiting for the chit-chat to stop. I'm waiting for the mask to be over your noses. I'm waiting for the device screens to be closed. We don't need our devices for quite some time. All right, just waiting for you guys to be ready. Okay. So the first thing I need to do is define what is reproduction. So if you guys remember, when we looked at our notes, we talked about Mrs. Gren, and one of the R's in Gren is reproduction, which is one of the things that we consider as a trait for being something that's living. So what does reproduction mean?
Producing.
Producing what?
Something.
Producing offspring. So when we talk about reproduction, we're talking about producing offspring. All right, so I want to make sure you guys have that written down in your notes. Anything that I write in my notebook is stuff that you should be writing in your notebook, and the devices should be closed. We don't need them for quite some time. Vita. Yep. Close the device. You don't need it for quite some time. All the way. You don't need it. All right. So with reproduction, there's 2 different types that we need to think about. There's asexual and there's sexual reproduction. Asexual and sexual reproduction. So, with asexual reproduction, we have one parent, and these things are an exact clone. With sexual reproduction, you have 2 parents. Now, in some cases with plants, they might have 3 or 4. It can be a little bit more flexible with plants, but in general, when we're thinking about animals, they will only have the 2 parents. The other thing that's special about sexual reproduction is that the offspring is different. So offspring is unique. So that's the first thing we need to think about. So I'm going to give you a moment to write that down, and then we'll move on to the next activity. to, we did that defining section. So, I'm going to pass out these cards here. Now, if you're the first class using them, you're going to cut them out. And there's two headers. There's a header for sexual reproduction, and there's a header for asexual reproduction. What I have as well is a list of different statements, and I want you to decide if that statement falls under the category of sexual reproduction or asexual reproduction. And it's what you think. I will go over the answers at the end, but I want you guys to learn a little bit more about sexual and asexual reproduction. And I just want you guys to take your best guess on which one do you think it would fit into. When you guys have it done, let me know. I'll give you a sticker for getting it done. And yeah, I'll have some scissors for you guys to work on this. Yep. Yeah, so I want you guys to work in pairs. Or threes is fine. Cool. All right, take a seat, everybody.
Take a seat.
Go back to your original seat. Two per table. Judah, move back to your seat. All right, let me give you the instructions for today's Mahi choice. So, as always, I try to give you guys a variety of different activities at different levels. So, the first thing that I have on there is Ed Puzzles. And I have a blast from the past when you guys are doing remote learning. And I have two videos for these Ed Puzzles. The first video for the Ed Puzzle is about pollination, and it's a stop motion. It's a really good introduction into talking about how plants do that sexual reproduction. The advanced video, again also on Ed Puzzle, is about how you can grow plants from your food. So if you have leftover food scraps, oh wait. If you have leftover food scraps, how will you grow it? And it's really just looking at the different vegetables and fruits and thinking, are they sexual, asexual reproduction? So that's your first choice. With the Ed Puzzle, you're going to need headphones. You're going to be watching it on your laptop, so feel free to borrow some if you need them. For the literacy activity, you have two choices. So the first choice, which is the easy one, is a page from the side pad about pollination and about the tui, which is one of the great New Zealand pollinators. I'll put this at the front here. The second one that's a little bit harder is from a website from the Science Learning Hub about attracting pollinators, and it's all focused on New Zealand pollinators. With this one here, I have a list of questions, but I don't want you guys to write the answer to the questions. I want you guys to practice reading text and finding the answer there. So read the text. When you think you found the answer, highlight the lines, and then write the number of the questions that it answers to. So for number one, you'd be like, if pollen and plants can't move on their own, how does the pollen get transferred between plants? And you highlight when you find that answer. So this is the advanced one. This is the easy one. I'll leave them on the front table. You need to do one Ed Puzzle and right. You need to do one Ed Puzzle and one literacy activity. And you have to do one that's easy and one that's advanced. So I'll give you guys a good amount of time to get that work done. You can choose it to do either order. I'll also put out the headphones for you guys who need headphones for the video. Alright, hop to it.
Hop to that.
So I just want to do some final notes for today's lesson and just to recap some of these key ideas. Huh? Yeah, go for it, grab it. It should be there. All right, so I want you guys to close your devices. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to swap to the document camera to talk about pollination. Here we go. Make that bigger. Should hopefully be recording right now. Yes, I am. All right. So, what I want you guys to do is close your devices because we won't need them for the remainder of today's lesson. I do want you guys to get your notebooks out so you guys are ready to write down some things. So, this is actually a really good question that I heard someone ask, even though it is a little bit of an awkward question. And the question was, how do plants have sex? Because we were talking about sexual reproduction. So, all right, I'm waiting for the headphones to get taken out of ears. I'm waiting for your notebooks to be open. And I'm waiting for you guys to be ready. Those worksheets should be glued into your books. Vita, go back to your seat, thanks. So that way you're ready for your notes. Hold on to the flowers. Oh, we don't have the flowers. Hold on to them, because I'm going to show you some things. All right. So, I'll wait till you guys are ready. You need your notebook out, but you can put the devices away. All right. So, as I was saying, plants can't move around in order to do sexual reproduction. So what they rely on is pollination. So pollination, and I want you guys to write this down into your books.
Pollination.
Is the movement of pollen from one plant to another. So let me just flick for a quick moment to my Google Slides so you guys can, or not Google Slides, my PowerPoint so you guys can see what I mean as an image. So when we're looking at that, and it has pollen, I have my bee, which is my pollinator. So this guy is going to be the animal that's going to be moving that pollen. And it's moving it from one flower to another. And when you guys are doing reading, you would have learned there's multiple different ways that flowers encourage pollinators to come by. It's by using color of the flowers, by scent, by nectar, things like that. So pollen is the sperm of a plant. And I know a lot of people are surprised and laugh by it, but remember how you have to have a sperm and an egg in order to have offspring. And so pollen is that sperm. Now, in order for that movement to occur, we need pollinators. So this job is done by pollinators. So pollinators can be animals, they can be insects, animals, birds, insects. All those things can work as pollinators. And the other thing to keep in mind is that the flower attracts them. So it can attract them by the color, it can attract them by the scent, it can also attract them by offering things like nectar, which is a food. Because plants can make their own food, but animals can't. Now, what happens when that pollen moves from one plant to another is that it allows for fertilization. You guys know what fertilization means? Sure. It means that we have the egg and the sperm, and that creates your offspring, which in this case will be seeds. So that's how the seeds come about. Now, sometimes these seeds are encased in fruits, and we'll talk about that in our next lesson when we talk about seed dispersal. But I just want to show you guys one of my flowers, so you guys can think about the ones that are on your table. But here what we notice with this flower is we have all these anthers, and all these anthers have pollen on them. And in fact, you can see some of the pollen on the flower as well. So we want to move this from one flower to another. And so like I said, the things such as nectar, color, scent, all of those are going to attract our pollinators. And when they come, they're going to have to maybe like put their little insect tongue down really quite far to get that nectar. And they want to do that so that way they get the pollen on them. Then they go to the next flower, they land, and they're going to deposit the pollen on the stigma, which is the female part of the plant. So a lot of plants have both male and female parts. The pollen from the new plant grows down, and down here is where we're going to find the eggs for our flowers. So that's going to get fertilized. It's going to create some seeds, and then this bit here is going to produce the seeds for the next plant. Does that make sense to everybody? So that's how sexual reproduction works in flowers. Now, in some flowers, they do sexual reproduction. In some plants they do sexual reproduction, and some they do asexual. They can actually do both depending on the type that you have. There's also types of plants that have a separate male and female part. Feijoa trees are a good example of that. So feijoa trees have a male tree and they have a female tree. So it really depends. There's lots of diversity in the plant kingdom. Yes, I realize that. So we're going to stop soon. So just to kind of look at our checklist, if you guys feel confident, you can tick off 5 and 6. Can you tell me what sexual and asexual reproduction are? Can you describe the process of pollination? So to recap today's lesson, we were describing pollination. More work on that because I know some of you guys didn't get all the tasks finished. But you should be able to compare and contrast sexual and asexual reproduction. I think you guys can do that. And then you should hopefully be able to describe the process of pollination. Great work today, guys. You guys completed that matching activity. And you got probably 1 out of the 2 activity tasks done. So I'm going to take a few beads out because you didn't get both activity tasks done. But you guys did a good job today. All right? You're welcome to take home the flowers if you want. You can put them in your hair and wear them. I do have a couple of hair bobby pins if you need help to keep them in. Otherwise, return my items. So headphones, any flowers you don't want, pens, pencils, pencil sharpeners. The other thing to do is wipe down the table. So spray and wipe are on the next to the door. Make sure you get that done as well.